Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 4. I can hardly believe that we're almost going on a whole month of me not seeing you guys. I hope everyone is doing well. If you have not been watching these screencasts and you're just starting, please be mindful that if you need to pause anything, you can pause it. It goes a little bit faster, actually a lot faster than we would go through notes in class. So just be mindful of that. Before we get into this week, which is responses to imperialism and imperialism throughout the world, I do want to go over your weekly overview with you. Like always, you should have received this packet from your substitute. So if you did not receive it, make sure you ask for a copy or print it from the website. So in looking at this week, we're going to finish up one of the days looking at the Belgian Congo, which I consider a case study in imperialism. It is one of the absolute worst experiences and instances of imperialism throughout the world. Additionally, we'll move on to imperialism in China and Japan. You guys will complete a review guide and have a short imperialism quiz this week. So please be mindful to make sure you're completing those Kahoots, do your review guide, and just stay on top of your work. Reach out with any questions that you may have. So really briefly, I'm just going to cover some of the information that should have come up for you in your work from last week. The first thing I want to make sure we point out is the Berlin Conference. So the Berlin Conference is a meeting in which representatives from Europe get together and they divide Africa amongst themselves. This leads to what becomes known as the Scramble for Africa, which is the conquest of Africa by major European powers. And if you see, it lasts until pretty recently. It lasts until 1914. If you take a look at the map all the way to the right of the screen, this shows you the traditional ethnic boundaries and ethnic groups that were in Africa, and then all of a sudden they were lumped together by these European nations. Creates a lot of problems for the native Africans. Like I said, you're starting this week talking about the Belgian Congo. Belgian Congo was ruled, or set up, I guess you could say, by a man named King Leopold II. Out of the Berlin Conference, he was given direct control of the Congo, which is in Central Africa. Direct rule, he had no say from the Kingdom of the Congo, and exploits. He exhibits a lot of economic exploitation by taking ivory and rubber. He takes this from the Congo back to Belgium, uses it for himself. He horribly abuses the native or indigenous people. In order for King Leopold to get what he wants from the natives, he will harshly punish people who do not meet the quota. Quotas are an assigned amount of something that you need to produce. Most common way of punishing someone in the Belgian Congo who wasn't doing what they were supposed to do was to cut off their hands. You might say, well, that doesn't make any sense. How can someone who doesn't have any hands produce what the king wants him to produce? Well, it sends a message to others that you need to be working faster and efficiently, or this could potentially happen to you. It's a horrible instance of imperialism. As you should have looked at your DBQ, the documents that you were analyzing last week, there's lots of different reactions to imperialism. Sometimes there's reluctance and cooperation, like signing a treaty. Ruling African families cooperate. Many elites might go to Europe for an education. There's also violence and warfare. The French will have to deal with things like rebellions in West Africa. There's a war in South Africa called the Boer War. And the British will battle the Zulus in Southern Africa, the Sepoys in India, the Boxers in China, Muslims in Sudan. So not everyone just accepted imperialism, but it plays out very differently throughout the world. In places like China, we'll start to see a problem with them and the British. The British actually want to sell a drug, opium, into China. It leads to an addiction of about 12 million Chinese citizens during this time, which will eventually lead to something that becomes known as the Opium Wars. In China, they will have other problems that come out of the Opium Wars, including things like the Boxer Rebellion, which you guys will read about this week. We will also start to see how Europeans are interacting with a place like Japan. Europeans encountered Japan in the 1540s. They will do lots of things there. And then Japan will become isolated. Japan will say, we don't really need any of this stuff from the Europeans. And that will lead to Japanese imperialism, where different groups will try to take over parts of Japan, ultimately forcing Japan to open up to their influence. So all of these things are going to kind of tell you how imperialism plays out throughout the world. There are major historical themes and similarities in India, Africa, China, and Japan. So we'll be taking a look at the last of them this week. As I said, don't forget to complete your review guide, and if you have any questions, please reach out. I hope everyone is doing great, and I will talk to you all soon.